overreactions. Dan, if I said, looking at the schedule, this is the best chance Josh Allen has to make the Super Bowl finally, is that an overreaction?
I think it is, because I feel like they have the same chance every year. Look, they were in the AFC Championship game last year. The year before, they had the Chiefs in their own building. I just feel like Josh Allen's going to have a chance to make the Super Bowl every single year he plays. The Bills have shown that they build and maintain a competitive roster at a high level. I think one of these years it breaks through. But I get the question, right, because of the schedule, but I don't know. I don't know if they have a better chance this year than they did last year.
Okay, the next one.
Which I think was a good chance.
Would it be an overreaction to say that the 49ers will cruise into the playoffs?
Because of the schedule, right? And they finish with, I think, their last 8 weeks, they don't play anybody that made the playoffs last year. I say it's an overreaction for a couple reasons. One, the start's not great. They have 4 road games out of their first 6. They have some long road trips this year. And we don't know what this version of the 49ers is going to look like. A lot of change, especially on the defensive side of the ball, for San Francisco this offseason. We'll see how good they are coming out of the gate.
Okay, and then finally, we stay in the NFC for the last one. If I said the Bears are going to finish last in the NFC North again, is that an overreaction?
It's not an overreaction, because the rules say someone has to. And the other 3 teams were all in the playoffs last year. Don't show us a whole lot of reason why they would take big steps back. I think the Bears could have a good season and still finish last in that division.
Well, so it's an interesting point. And there was a fascinating story that dropped yesterday. For those of you who didn't see it, ESPN.com released excerpts from a book coming up by our Seth Wickersham. It's called American Kings, a biography of the quarterback. And it is all about all sorts of quarterbacks. The book is not exclusively about Caleb Williams, but the parts about Caleb Williams and the process by which he became the #1 pick in the draft jumped off the page yesterday. There was a quote in it from Carl Williams, Caleb's father, saying, "Chicago is the place quarterbacks go to die." There's a quote from Caleb himself, or a quote from Carl saying, Caleb wondered aloud to confidants, "Do I want to go there? I don't think I can do it with Waldron," which means the offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, who got fired during the season. He writes, Carl Williams went on to great lengths to try to circumvent the NFL draft, Seth wrote, wanting to give his son an opportunity to choose his future employer. And in case you're wondering, didn't that happen once before, Archie Manning and Eli? Yes, it did. And apparently Carl Williams met with Archie to try and figure it out. Ultimately, we know what happened. Caleb winds up being drafted by the Bears. But Dominique, as you read all this yesterday, what was your reaction?
Well, first, I immediately pre-ordered Seth's book, because if these are his throwaway quotes, then whatever's actually in the book is going to be outstanding. And the second thing was, why would they talk to Seth? Like, it seems like it serves them no advantage, and it puts Caleb in a really tough situation where whatever goodwill he might have had, he's wasted it. And of course, he has to play well, but I don't think that there's going to be anyone willing to extend him any leniency or excuses or blame the O-line or blame the coordinators next year. In part because him and his father came into the situation expecting the worst, and the worst happened. So I think Caleb has put himself, not that the pressure can get any higher on Caleb Williams, but he's put himself in a situation where no one's going to defend him if things don't go well, so he better play well.
I think the Caleb Williams case is something that's just going to be the start of many quarterbacks. He was the first NIL baby in the draft, in which from Oklahoma to USC, he took a giant payday, went with Lincoln Riley, got there. Talking to Cliff Kingsbury, who was his quarterbacks coach there at USC, Caleb was living a life as a quarterback that even the most decorated quarterbacks had never lived before. High-rise apartment in downtown LA, sports car, the money. Didn't need the NFL like maybe some quarterbacks had in the past. So I think we have to look at this with a different lens, as we saw it this year with maybe some of the stuff that was coming out with Shador and how he was dictating things. This is going to be the case moving forward, where a lot of these quarterbacks coming into the NFL might not have the, yes, sir, NFL, please do me as I'm so grateful. No, these guys, they can stay in college if they don't want to leave early because they're making enough money. And in this case, Carl Williams, the father, he was exploring all options, and they ended up leaving early and going to Chicago. But I don't fault them for saying, hey, we're going to explore everything because we don't have to go to the NFL yet.
He was exploring options that actually only existed in his own head. The idea that he could have circumvented the draft and been a free agent, it doesn't hold up. The rules say he would have had to go into this year's draft. And oddly enough, any team other than the Bears would have been allowed to take him if that had happened. So I guess if you really wanted to play it all the way out, you could have. Ultimately, He went, right? And part of it says that he got to Chicago and he went back to his dad and said, I think I can make it work here. So ultimately he said, basically, Dad, chill out. We'll take care of this. But yeah, it's definitely, this looks bad for everyone. Dominique is absolutely right that now Caleb Williams, every time he struggles, is going to be in the minds of Bears fans, the guy who didn't want to be here, right? He didn't want to be here. He never wanted to.
Was he wrong?
Yeah.
Well, who could blame him?
Was he wrong?
But I got to say a couple things. One, there was no indication, in at least people I talked to from inside that building, that Caleb Williams was mailing it in or miserable there. Like he was trying to make it work, and I think that will continue. But yeah, I think a lot of it comes from the father trying to navigate the situation, and I think ultimately it seemed like the young man himself took control and said, I'm gonna do this.
Look, I mean, we're all fathers in this conversation,
yes,
and parents in general, and the bottom line of it is, you want what is best for your kid. I never blame a parent for trying to figure out something that is best for their kid, whether it's Deion Sanders or Carl Williams or anybody else. The reality is, Chicago has been the place that quarterbacks
yes,
go to die. They did have a terrible coaching situation last year, which we were pointing out real time before the draft, and it proved to be exactly right. They did exactly what they had done in the cases of Trubisky and Fields before him. They had lame duck coaches that they were going to fire if things went badly. So here he is on his second coach in 2 years.
And no veteran quarterback in the room with him. It was Tyson Bagent and another, like, now they have Case Keenum in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
So in theory, they've gotten everything that was wrong right now. And hopefully last year didn't do any sort of lasting damage. In some cases, it has. I don't blame the family for this at all. As we continue, that's inherently a bad thing. And Dominique's point, and we have been talking about it, is the best way to do that is to incentivize winning. And I'm all for that. Listen, I'm not sitting here. Let me make clear what I'm not saying before we get into anything else. I don't believe that any of these players step foot on a field in any of these sports not trying as hard as they can. But there's no question organizations in the NBA are not trying as hard as they can to win games late. And from an NFL perspective, if nothing else, I think it is terrible that the fans of a team that is having a bad year start rooting against them in November because it benefits them to lose. You should never want your team to lose. It should never be better for your team to lose than to win. So if only for that reason, I like the idea. Now, Dan, I know you did a little poking around when we did the piece the other day.
Would the NFL ever consider this?
Right.
And the answer I came up with is I don't think so at this point. They don't feel like they have a tanking problem that they need to address. Now, would it be a fun off-season television event? And would that be appealing to the NFL? I think history tells us yes. But it doesn't sound like this is something that has ever been talked about at the competition committee level or certainly ever been brought to a vote. At this point, they like their draft the way it is.
Well, I don't think the NFL is a tanking problem, but it doesn't mean that they're not in the business of the revenue challenge, right? The revenue opportunity, and that's a major revenue opportunity because that's a day in which you can once again own the marketplace. And a lot of brands can subsidize probably the biggest event that we will have in NFL throughout the entire season. That would be the biggest event.
It would be enormous. And look, it is not, you don't have to have a tanking problem necessarily. I mean, the NBA draft lottery, for those who don't follow this closely, the team that has had the worst record, what is it now, 5 years running or 6 years running, has not gotten the #1 pick. I think that's fantastic. Let teams don't incentivize the losing. I think that is evidence of the